Welcome, dear friends, to our 21-day journey with Paul and Stephen. We are here in this therapeutic journey to learn new tools and resources so we can live a better life, especially after the United States election in 2016. Many people were asking what to do, and this amazing book, Paul and Stephen by Emmanuel, can give us lots of tips and true reasoning on how to sustain our daily lives with joy, courage, and hope. Hi, Leonor. So, dear friends, here we are. Beautiful chapter. It's about journeys and sacrifices. And isn't that what life is all about? Journeys and sacrifices. But what is it and why do we need to go through it? Well, in this very specific moment here, we're traveling with Paul to the world. He was to the east and now he's traveling to the west. Firsthand. Hi, Janete. So he's traveling with friends. Remember, we stopped at a moment when his best friend Barnabas and him had to go separate ways. But they gave a hug knowing that friendship is beyond just being physically together. It's about being united heart to heart. So they go their different destinies, and we begin this new chapter by knowing that Silas and Paul are together. Hello, Adilson. So, in the company of Silas, who had become harmonized with his work aspirations, Paul left Antioch, crossing the mountains and reaching his hometown after enormous difficulties. My friends, remember, Paul had already found his inner pathway. Many people think the day I understand the north of my life is going to be joy day in, day out, externally speaking. And that's not right. What is important is the inner joy. The external belongs to the summation of everyone's contribution. So that's why we really need to focus ourselves on the real pathway. Hello, Valeria and Adilson. We learn with Paul that in this journey of life, it may be very difficult. We need to cross mountains, but we're never going to be alone. And we also need to face, sometimes, as Emmanuel describes, enormous difficulties. Enormous. And the greatest difficulties are within ourselves. Hello, Raquel. Thank you for your adorable gratitude. Thank you for being with us too. So let us meditate. First quiz of the day. What are the enormous difficulties we're facing in the current times? Inner. The external is a reflection of the inner. So let us ask ourselves, what are my greatest difficulties? Why is it important to know it? We often think that we don't need to know. Life is going to resolve by itself. But actually, when Allan Kardec asked the good spirits through the mediums of the time, and he published it in the Spirit's book, he asked, what can I do or can we do to overcome our bad tendencies and expedite our progress? And the answer, my friends, is fascinating. They say self-knowledge. Know yourself. So we need to know the mountains we have inside of us so we can cross them. And like Paul, he's traveling and he's crossing the mountains with enormous difficulties, which is also natural. How many lives have we all created these mountains of difficulty? And now we're facing them, but we need to know. Because blindly we cannot overcome them, right? Hi, Liz Delia. Bendiciones para usted también. Thank you for being with us. Loving mother of adorable children. You are a role model for us too, Liz Delia. Hi, Nubia. Beautiful children too, Nubia. Very promising, right? Our children are the promise. So, my friends, what are our difficulties? We need to know. If you think you're going to be overwhelmed by laying out like all of them, think about 3 major difficulties inside of you. Let us give 1 minute of pause and reflect. 1 minute of pause. Let us keep breathing, because whenever we think about difficulties, we are holding our breath. Like, no, we have to keep breathing to oxygenize the body and make sure that we are outlining the 3 greatest difficulties we have inside of us. Because life is like Paul right now, journeys and sacrifices. He's crossing the mountains with Silas with great difficulty. But he's not alone, and you're not alone either. I'm not alone. We're together in both realms of life. And Silas was with him. The beauty of it all is that Silas, appointed by Simon Peter to help Paul in this journey, he had a peaceful temperament. He had noteworthy spiritual qualities, and he adjusted himself to Paul's pace, which is very beautiful, because it's telling us that if we have more experienced workers ahead of us, let us adapt to their pace first. I remember when I was a teenager living in Brazil, preparing for a major exam, and I was taking a course for writing, and a famous author from Brazil was teaching the course, Luiz Puntel. And I remember he was teaching us different styles of writing, and I, in my young arrogance, he asked us to write an essay and pick one of the styles he taught us. And I asked him, but can I write in my own style? It's so interesting, because he kindly turned to me with a joyful smile, and he said, the day you find out about your style, you can. Right now, you don't know yet. While you practice the style of others, you find your own. What a beautiful lesson that I learned from him. Wherever he is in the world, I thank him very much. What a lesson, my friends. A lesson like Silas to Paul. Paul was experienced. Silas was younger. He was new. It's not about age. It's about new to the job, new to the work, to the dynamics. So he adjusted himself to Paul's way of working. Like us, we don't know our style yet, but Jesus is ahead of us. So let us first conform to his style, and then one day we'll find our style. At the end of the day, we probably will find out that it's all the same, but we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Hi, Angelita and Livia. Great. Silas is now very inspiring to us. And they are traveling, they are helping people, and he finally, Paul and Silas, after crossing the mountains of the Taurus Mountains, they reach his birth city, Tarsus. And what happens when you go to a place where you've lived, etc.? Inevitably, we rewind the tape of our lives, right? There is a word for this. Sometimes we go melancholic because we miss this, that, and the other. Now let's listen what Emmanuel is disclosing to us. Something that no New Testament books can tell us because it's a revelation of the spirits through Emmanuel. They say, he stood in front of the old house of his birth. He saw once more the pleasant place where he had played in the early days of his childhood, and contemplated the sports arena where he had driven his Roman biga. But he exhumed all these memories without suffering their depressing influence, because he had given everything over to Christ as a patrimony into whose possession he could enter later when he had completed his divine mandate. My friends, beautiful lesson, especially for us immigrants. For everyone, but for us, because remember, right now, Paul is migrating here and there. He goes back to his birth city, he rewinds the tape, and when he's tempted to feel nostalgic, to feel melancholic, he doesn't get there. He doesn't go there. What does Emmanuel say? He exhumed all these memories without suffering their depressing influence, because he had given everything to Christ. And he's not indulging in melancholy because he is with Christ. So if you are an immigrant, like I am, who isn't in this world, by the way, well, when we turn our hearts to Christ, melancholy doesn't take place. So we need to get one with Jesus, the best lesson for all immigrants in this world. If you're feeling nostalgic, feeling, oh my God, I miss this and that and the other, it's because we're not connected with Jesus yet. With the Christ consciousness, knowing that we're all brothers and sisters. We are not only to live around those few people around us, but to open our hearts. Open our hearts to everyone in our lives. And then we'll feel complete in spite of all the challenges, right? So here we have a lesson that bridges up with a lesson in the Gospel according to Spiritism by Kardec. When we learn about melancholy, the chapter 5 on suffering, there is a message by a spirit named Georges that shares with the mediums at Kardec's time and all of us that we shall say no to melancholy because it devitalizes us. No wonder many people, when they start feeling melancholic, they feel weaker, and not willing to do anything. So don't go there. Just say no, thank you. I love everyone in my life, but I also open the doors of my heart to everyone who I encounter. Everyone, no exception whatsoever. And then I look around and I see there is no fear. If you are afraid of people nowadays because of the current elections, don't be. Let us exercise these words that were brought in a children's song at the Spiritist side of Baltimore many years ago through the loving and kind medium Alba Morales. It's like this. G-O-D, God is here. G-O-D, God is everywhere. G-O-D, God is here. G-O-D, God is everywhere. And is in everyone too. So whenever we feel we're closing our hearts to a few, open it up. And G-O-D, God is everywhere and in everyone. My friends, Paul of Tarsus is already with us. Is already with us. showing the way to a new life, a life that is beyond limits, beyond it. Thank you, Leonor, for your kindness too and being with us. So he stayed a little bit there in the capital of Cilicia, and they went their way. And nights out in the open, can you imagine? Emmanuel is describing the scenario to us. Paul and Silas, nights out in the open, numerous tribulations, threats of bandits, countless perils confronted the missionaries, who every night handed out the results of the harvest to the Divine Master. And every morning they prayed for his mercy, so that they would not fail at his priceless opportunity to work, no matter how hard the daily task might be. That's the recipe for us. Every night, thank you very much, I did this, that, and the other, like St. Augustine advises us to do in the Spirit's book. Every night, I used to go, rewind the tape, and check what I did. Without fear, remember the courage. Courage to face ourselves and be merciful to us, and forgive ourselves too for our shortcomings. And learn where the limits are so we can work upon it. And soon after, in the morning, we open ourselves and ask for mercy. Because we need a lot of mercy. We're still learning a lot. Like children, we need to be patient with ourselves and with others as well. Filled with this active trust. We love this expression, right? Active trust. It's fascinating the way our educator Emmanuel is describing it to us. Active trust. I trust, but with activity. I put it into work. They arrived in a city named Derbe, where they embraced friends and they saw that the church was growing. People who used to be persecutors became Christians. Paul rejoiced. And on the same night, there was a large gathering in Lystra. Very interesting. Large gathering there. Well, they kept traveling and going here and there and doing what they needed to do. They met Timothy, who was the grandson of a friend of Paul, Lois, and who later became great friends and great person in the tasks of traveling and spreading the good news. They spread the gospel in Asia. In Asia, my friends. You know, all these places we look in the map and we think, but Christ's message hasn't been there. Actually, it began in the east and it came to the west. The east was the first place. The west was the second one. And Paul, he began in the east, Asia. And now he's going to start a journey to the west. But before he does so, he listens to a voice. Let's listen from Emmanuel. Paul was continuing to work hard for the spread of the gospel in Asia, when one night, after the usual prayers, he heard a voice saying to him in a loving tone. A loving tone. We need to practice this loving tone. We often think that the messages that come from above are always like stern. They may be stern, but loving. Press on, Paul. Take the light of heaven to other places of darkness. Others are awaiting you on the way to infinity. And he meditated. But am I not doing this? He is. Hi, Mama. Yes, it was Stephen, his friend, every minute of the way, who as the Divine Master's representative was rousing the apostle to the Gentiles to sow in other places. So he was thinking to himself, this is the beauty of it all. because he receives a message and he meditates. Do you meditate when you receive a message? When you read a message from any of these books, do we meditate? Because in the Medium's book, we learn from Kardec that there is one law we can't lose sight. If we receive a message and we don't take the bottom line of it all, the take-home message, the spirits are not going to keep sending anymore because we don't listen to them. It's like, oh, yeah, but we don't conform. Paul is a role model for us in that regard. He received a message. Press on. Press on? Well, I am pressing on. No, he was obedient. He was resigned in his heart. Take the light of heaven to other places of darkness. He meditated. And after a pause, he said to Silas and Timothy, highly inspired, I believe the Master is calling me to new endeavors. Besides, I can see that this region has already received the divine seed. And after a pause, he emphasized, we have not met with many difficulties on this occasion. The last time Barnabas and I were expelled, imprisoned, beaten, stoned. This time, however, none of that has happened, meaning that there are already secure bases for the victory of Christ around here. Thus, we must proceed to where the obstacles are and overcome them so that the Master may become known and glorified, for we are involved in a battle and cannot shy away from the front line. I'm impressed. Are you impressed? It's impressive. It's a lesson for us. Remember, we are learning that this world is so similar nowadays. Still, we have a lot to overcome inside and out. And he is giving us a tip, a thermometer. So let us use the thermometer for us as well. Therapeutic moment now. Second therapeutic moment of the day. Let us use the thermometer. Are we facing great obstacles and difficulties? Are we? Or are we just living a life like, a little headache here, a little stone over there, a little roadblock over here, but not major? Thermometer of Christ. We are not groundbreaking inside of ourselves. When we really face the greatest obstacles, boom, temperature, perfect temperature. We know in the right direction. So if we want to know we are fulfilling our reincarnatory plan and our mission in this life, thermometer of difficulty. Is it hard? Is it being like difficult and struggling? It's a sign we are in the right pathway. I remember reading from Deepak Chopra, his book, I think it's 7 Laws of Spiritual Success, something of the nature. But very interesting when he talked about the law of uncertainty. Very interesting because it matches Paul of Tarsus here. He says that since we're approaching New Year's Eve, at the end of December, of course, believe it or not, time is flying. In a month, the year's ending. Wonderful, welcome the new and bless the old. But before we get there, Deepak Chopra teaches us an exercise he does and used to do with his children. What was it? He said, every New Year's Eve, he would sit down with his children and line up possible uncertainties that they're going to face in the new year. And rejoice, because he says, when we are in a place where there is great uncertainty, it's a sign we're progressing. We are where we have never been before, and that's a sign of progress. When we keep ourselves in the known, in the comfort zone, it may be comfortable, but it's a sign we are not learning anything new. It's everything the same old way. So if in the new year uncertainty is ahead, welcome uncertainty. It's not easy, but for us, uncertainty is relative. You know why? Because we know that life goes on. We know we're destined to progress. We know we are destined to grow and to expand, and we are marching towards happiness. So this uncertainty is relative because we know the end of the road. We know the goal. We just don't know precisely through which roads we're going to travel. But one thing we know, if it's something we've never faced before, yoo-hoo, we got to someplace new where we've never been. So for those who are around the world facing what's going to happen now with the new president in the United States and etc., let's rejoice. We are where we've never been. And that's a good thing because we are learning new things. And I was reading even the scientific community. Amazing, the same universal message that the mentors brought to us, they brought to scientists. And I read this week, scientists writing to scientists saying, let us work harder now because now we need to make sure we prevent problems and remedy them fast in these new challenging times. Beautiful message, a message for us too. So Paul, he understood we now need to go places where we haven't been. Let's go to the west. Silas and Timothy were respectfully silent. And he said to them, I believe that once there, in this new location, the Master will give us what we need. And that's how we resolve our temporary uncertainties. Active trust. Active trust. Thank you, Valeria, for reaffirming it to us. And then he looks outside the door where they are. He finds Luke. Remember the doctor that gave us the label Christians? For good reason at the time. And they start chatting, what you're doing here. He's a physician and he's helping. And then Paul, lively talking to Luke, get this insight. He suggests to his friend Luke, listen, Luke, if you have no immediate commitments, why don't you devote yourself entirely to the work of the Divine Master? And let us listen the reply. He replies, yes, but I have to consider the duties of my profession. How many people say the same? Oh, I would love to work more for the spreading of Spiritism, but you know, I'm so busy in my profession. Yes? No? Let's listen to Paul. I know, I feel the love too. God is amazing. This book covers all bases of our daily lives. Let's listen. But who was Jesus but the divine doctor of the whole world? Until now, you've been healing bodies, which in one way or another will perish sooner or later. Wouldn't treating the spirit be a more worthwhile effort? I don't mean by this that one should disregard the medicine of the world. However, that job should be for those who do not yet possess the spiritual values that you bear. I've always believed that the medicine for the body is a set of sacred principles that people cannot dispense with until they decide on the divine and immutable principles of spiritual healing. Luke pondered these words very seriously and replied, you're right. Would you like to work with us to spread the gospel in Macedonia, the West? And Paul said that feeling triumphant. Let us feel the emotions. triumphant. I shall go with you, Luke decided. There was enormous joy amongst the 4 disciples of Christ: Timothy, Silas, Paul, and Luke. The following day they set sail, and Luke explained himself to his commander and requested 1 year of leave of absence. And he found somebody else to replace him, and he started the journey with Paul of Tarsus. The new friends were rejoiced in the journey they were taking together. So it's a good thing for us. I don't think this message is telling us to quit our professions and just be preachers. No. But we can combine, combine both. Combine both. Yeah? And do the work together. Why not? Balance. How many lives have we lived only for our current professions? All of them, probably. And now it's the first one, probably. We are learning to balance out. So I know a man, not saying names, who is already discarnated. He came to me. He was the president of a center, a spiritist said. He came to me one day and said, Vanessa, I didn't ask anything. And he said, one day when I get retired, then I'm gonna work for spiritism nonstop. Now I can't because my profession is demanding. Okay, believe it or not, the day he retired, the next month he was diagnosed with cancer. No time. Less than a year later, he was discarnated. How can we guarantee that tomorrow there will be time for it? No guarantee. If somebody says, one day I will, it means they don't want to do it. Because when we don't want to do it now, we do it now. Tomorrow, only God knows. We only have the current time. We don't have tomorrow. One day I will do it. Maybe we won't be here. And the conditions are going to be changed. We may be sick, a loved one may be sick, blah, 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 blah. We may be discarnated. We won't have time. We have to do it now, singing in the rain. It's raining and we're singing and dancing. Singing and dancing in the rain. If you ask for the rain to stop so you can sing and dance, it's never going to happen. Because we don't know if we're going to be able to do it. So, beautiful lesson for us. Luke, thank you very much for your example. And they start traveling. And they stop after 3 nights in the open air. Jesus' friends went to a house of prayer because they stopped in Thessalonica before setting course to Thessalonica. They were in Lystra, forgive me for that. 3 nights in the open air. They went to a house of prayer located on the banks of the Ganges River. Philippi had no synagogue, and the prayer sanctuary, although called a house, was nothing more than a pleasant corner in nature surrounded by crumbling walls. To their great surprise, they only found women and young girls in prayer. But Paul, courageous, he entered into the female circle and spoke to the objectives of the gospel, as if he were in front of a large audience. The women was mesmerized by his sublime, ardent words. They discreetly wept wiped the tears that ran down their faces on receiving the news of the Master, and one of them, named Lydia, an honorable and generous widow, approached the missionaries, and confessing that she had been converted to the awaited Savior, she offered them her own house to found a new church. Paul of Tarsus looked at her with tears in his eyes. You see, he is a different man. He's truly in the present. He's not afraid of feeling joy. Some people, if we have tears in our eyes, even spiritists, they're like, oh, too much emotions. This person may be obsessed. Friends, we are emotional beings. Emotions are a part of our lives. If we leave emotions at the right time, we're not obsessed. We're just normal beings, healthy beings. It's the opposite. When we retain the emotions that are healthy, then we are in trouble. Good morning, Rita Di Cassia. Hi, Lydia. By the way, we're talking about Lydia here, who became friends with Paul, opened her house to found a new church. Beautiful name. Name also of Lydia Shepherd, the adorable child of Selene and Steve Shepherd, who did a great deal of work in the United States of America in Spiritism. So she was very sincere, and Paul was so grateful because he reflected. Listening to Lydia's voice overflowing with crystalline sincerity, he remembered that in the East, on the unforgettable day of Calvary, only women had followed Jesus to his painful death. And women were the first to see him after his glorious resurrection. And it was women again who, in a sweet spiritual encounter, now received the word of the gospel in the West for the first time. You see, women in the East embrace Jesus. Women in the West embrace Jesus' teachings too. Thank you, Aldilson, for your summary, reminding us of the eternal values in life, and may we be able to make better choices in how and where to dedicate our time. May the choices bring us a lighter conscience in our spiritual journey. So true. Hi, Fabio. Thank you, Adilson, for the summary. The apostle to the Gentiles silently contemplated the large group of young girls kneeling under the loving shade of the trees. And he said, we accept your hospitality. He was very courageous. For men to accept the hospitality of women at that time, it was very tricky. Even today, if that happens in certain parts of the world. The challenges of being a woman in the world today are great. Imagine 2,000 years ago. So Paul of Tarsus was very courageous to face the taboos of the time. And as a good follower of Jesus, he opened his heart. Hi, Ana Luisa. So Lydia, whose house was well furnished to her trade in purple wares, welcomed the Messiah's disciples with indescribable joy. Luke and Timothy continued their journey while Silas and Paul consecrated themselves to serving the gospel. And then they are there teaching about it, and they heard that in the Philippi city there was the tradition of the oracle Delphi, an infallible worker, and there was a girl who was employed by men. They were exploiting her psychic powers, and less evolved spirits were giving tips of worldly nature. Oh, it's so common nowadays. You know, psychics everywhere benefiting financially from their psychic powers, and it happened in the past and it happens to date. But now we're gonna learn what kinds of spirits are on the behind the scene. So Paul and Silas would go and preach in the streets of Philippi, and every day for 1 week, that girl, mediumistically receiving messages from these little evolved spirits, as says Emmanuel, would come at the end of their speech and say, Receive the messengers of redemption. They are not men, they are angels of the Most High. After 1 week of listening this, Paul himself said, this is not right. We are no angels. Some people would rejoice, feeling like, yeah, we're being praised. But Paul was wise. He's like, the higher spirits do not praise. They do not applaud like that. They encourage us, but they do not tell us that we're angels. So Paul, after 1 week, he was very patient and tolerant, but 1 week he understood he needed to help that girl who was being used by less evolved spirits. So he came firmly and approached the girl in an imperative tone and said, you perverse spirit, we are not angels. Out of love for the gospel, we are workers in a struggle with our own weaknesses. In the name of Jesus Christ, I order you to live forever. In the name of the Lord, I forbid you to create confusion among people, encouraging the petty interests of the world to the detriment of the sacred interests of God. He did a disobsession treatment on her. The poor girl recovered her senses immediately and was freed from the evil influence. The incident caused enormous astonishment among the people. Silas himself was dumbfounded. And he asked Paul, wasn't she speaking in God's name? And Paul gives us a lesson. That spirit might have spoken of God, but it did not come from God. What have we done to receive such praise? Day and night we fight against the imperfections of our soul. Jesus has ordered us to teach so that we may learn the hard way. You know that I am at war with the thorn of lower desires. Well then, would it be right for us to accept undeserving titles when the Master himself rejected the label of good? Of course. If that spirit had come from Jesus, its words would have been otherwise. It would have encouraged our efforts and understood our weaknesses. Besides, I got information on the girl and I know that she has been the key to a large, profitable network. Silas was impressed. So Paul is saying that we shall work mediumistically, but without profiting financially or egotistically benefiting from it. But you know what happened next? The girl had no powers any longer. Yes. And the city, and especially the men who were profiting from her mediumship, they were so enraged. They created a commotion. People came to Silas and Paul and started stoning them. And the people of the city arrested them. They are now in jail. Remember, they did a wonderful thing, but now they are arrested. Thermometer, they are doing right. So when you receive the setbacks of life, after doing good deeds, it's a sign you are in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. But the world still doesn't get it. Big deal. What do? What they did. They were in jail and they started praying. As they started praying, an unforeseen storm comes and opens the doors of the cells without a sound. They are in the middle of the night. The man, the jailer, is sleeping and all the doors open and they don't run away. They start talking about Jesus, consoling the hearts of the prisoners who are there. And they all start crying. They don't run away either. And he starts sharing the good news. Everybody rejoices, and Emmanuel says, nobody went for the exit door. Instead, they gathered around the unknown man, and many of them knelt in tears, converting to Jesus, to whom they proclaimed with kindness and strength. At daybreak, the jailer wakes up and sees everybody out of the cells, and he's going to kill himself because he knows there will be repercussions. Paul goes to him, the jailer, Lucanus, and says, wait up. You also deserve to listen about Jesus. Lucanus is moved. He changes his heart. He heard about the good news. Blessed are the afflicted. Blessed are those who learn the pathway of meekness, are obedient and kind and loving and misunderstood. He then takes Paul and Silas and treats their wounds, gives them food in their house. When the magistrates of Philippi learn about it, they are so fearful that they say, you know what? Release them, but ask them to run away from the city. Isn't that funny? Paul was satisfied, and with Silas, they are astonished about the generosity, and they meet Luke and Timothy, and they go to the next place. Yeah, Paul kept himself strong and above the least of frictions. My friends, I wanna tell you something quite interesting. In this new lesson, we're gonna learn the tone of what to do in the current times. Paul's attitude, let's listen from Emmanuel. Paul kept himself strong and above the least frictions. There were annoyances, adversities, unjust accusations, cruel slanders. Powerful threats sometimes fell on them. But the brave apostle of the Lord continued serene and firm through the storms. Serene and firm. Again and again, Emmanuel is teaching us a lesson. Serene and firm. Feminine, masculine. Serenity and firmness. The masculine, firmness. The storm, serene, but firm. That's the attitude. Whatever you read in the news nowadays. Is the president-elect tweeting like crazy? Ding, 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 ding. Let's not lose our serenity. Emotional contagion. Don't be contaminated by people's emotions. Let's remember, emotional intelligence depends on 3 elements. How we monitor our emotions and other people's emotions. Know the difference. What is mine? What is others? To avoid emotional contagion. And third, based on this knowledge, know what to do next. So, Paul of Tarsus, he shielded himself from emotional contagion. People were tweeting cruel slander. No Twitter at the time, but there was. The bird of slander also existed, was tweeting there in ancient times. Of course, it has always been. Slander has always been on the earth. Tweeting. Choo, 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 choo. And what did he do? He stayed strong, firm, serene. I'm not going to lose sight. My GPS is on. I know my pathway, and I pray. I shield myself by vibrating kindness. Some people ask me, Vanessa, what is that visualization we do of light to shield ourselves? No. When we feel selfish, we don't shield ourselves in light. It is only when we feel selfless that we shield ourselves, because we are vibrating at another frequency and we are connected to the higher spirits. So we send those who are in another frequency love, we're shielding ourselves. That's the best way to protect ourselves in the current times, is to emanate compassion. emanate kindness, emanate sweetness of the heart, indulgence towards people's imperfections, visualizing the president-elect in light and his team, visualizing Jesus blessing them, trusting, and doing what we need to do. If we keep looking what others are doing, I'm gonna bump, boom, because I'm forgetting what I have to do next in front of me. Here, my loved ones, my friends, my universal family. Hi, Marilda. So, and then a second tip. Forgive me, but this we can't lose sight. Beautiful chapter, journeys and sacrifices. So the journey with firmness, serenity, but there's a third element. I can't forget to share this. Emmanuel is teaching us that it was essential for Jesus to triumph in the hearts of people, and that was his motivation. He disregarded his inner caprices, any personal whims, giving priority to this reality over any comforts. And the mission continued amid formidable pain and obstacles, but secure and victorious in its divine purpose. We owe to Paul of Tarsus and his team a great deal. Thanks to his endurance and resilience, persistence and kindness, we're here today. We couldn't be here. Spiritism would not come true without the works of Paul and the people that came with him. How did he do it? 3 things: firmness, serenity, and calibrating himself with Jesus. He forgot about himself, his personal needs. So our dear mentor Joseph says, in the load of your baggage, keep essential needs. It's like a mother, I tell people, oh, you're going to be a parent? Wonderful. But remember, from now on, only personal, essential needs. If you are used to using, rubbing your feet every night and long bathtubs, etc., I think for a long while you won't be able to do it unless somebody else is taking care of your kids. But if you're doing the job, you will luckily have quick showers every day, which is essential. You luckily be able to feed yourself minimally. And we gain weight not because we're eating too much, but because of the natural stress. We are adjusting ourselves to the new. Essential needs are met. Paul learned that when we embrace our mission in life, we keep ourselves fulfilling essential needs for daily lives, but we focus on the needs of others. Oh, but I would love to rest more. I love to go to a spa and do this and that and the other. I love to take a week vacation. But when you have kids, when you have the universal family as our priority, there's no time. Life changes completely. Completely. You never go to a store again thinking of yourself. When you open a Spiritist center, it's like a child. Everything you do is for the community, for the people who are in your life, in that community. For example, we have Kardec Radio. We think of everyone who is listening. What else can we share so they can be nourished every day? And you will wait 2017 beautiful surprises at Kardec Radio. Thanks to Jesus. because we're focused. That's our motivation. The triumph of the good news, the joy that we're spreading to the hearts of everyone. Right? Hi, Luciene. So, new work, new dedication, new suffering. That's the goal. New work, new dedication, new suffering. If we are these three, we're in the right track. Not suffering because we're encountering something, because it's inevitable. But we have firmness, we have serenity, and we have essential needs. Essential needs. I don't need a house by the beach. You know what I do? I have in my house, because I love beaches too, I have a beautiful picture of a beach, and I look at it every day and I feel like this is my beach. This is my beach where I renew myself every day. Essential needs, my friend. If I am rewarding myself too much in this life while people are suffering, I'll be in trouble. I will discarnate knowing that I haven't done what I need to do. Hi, Larice. Thank you for your loving hearts. So, my friends, the last moment of the journey here in this chapter, he goes to Athens. It was his old dream. And Jesus gave him, they are traveling now to the west, going to the Greek lands of Athens. And it was an old plan of his. He thought, hi Claire, he had an old dream. And like many spiritists nowadays, they tell me, oh Vanessa, you're in the United States. And you know, if you talk science to people, they're going to understand Jesus' teachings and spiritism. I don't think so. I don't think so. Let's listen why. You want to know why? I will see it here, okay? Thank you, Larice. Rosandro is our friend. Big hug to Rosandro. So here we have, he's thinking, I'm going to Athens. Many intellectuals. He would proclaim the gospel of Jesus to the famous intellectual city. Like many people think, yes, I'm going to go there and talk to people who are intellectuals, and I'm going to talk about the spiritist science and Andre Lewis books, Evolution in Two Worlds, and all the scientists are going to proclaim. Really? Let's listen. Lesson for us to be learned, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Paul entered the city with great emotion. Athens still boasted much external beauty. Soft harmonies vibrated in the deep blue sky. Beautiful valleys. The great soul of the apostle was elated as he contemplated nature. He remembered the noble philosophers. The passers-by could not see his soul. Paul was a squalid body that hardship had rendered strange looking. Many took him for a beggar, a human rag, from the large mass continually flowing in from the helpless east. In the enthusiasm of his good intentions, the emissary of the gospel could not perceive these contrary opinions about him. Filled with courage, a trademark of those who follow Jesus, he decided to preach in the public square, which was common at the time. He was not crazy. He was using a common habit of the time. And he started preaching. He was eager to face the Athenian mind, as he had already done with the material greatness of the city. And he's talking and talking, and the audience bursts into laughs of sarcasm. Is this philosopher a new god? The passerby asked mockingly. He's too clumsy for that, somebody else answered. Where have we ever seen such a god? See how his hands are shaking? He seems ill and weak. His beard is unkept and he's covered with scars. He's crazy. Let's not waste our time. Paul heard all this and watched all the lines of people left, indifferent and hard-hearted. The public gathering had given him the impression of a large group of individuals poisoned by false erudition. For more than a week, he persevered in preaching in the street without appreciable result. What an enduring soul. For 1 week, sometimes we try something once and we stopped. Paul is an example for us. He tried it for 1 week, every day. No one was interested in Jesus, much less in offering him lodging as a simple matter of sympathy. It was the first time since he had begun his mission that he would leave a city without having founded a church. Paul appealed enough to a few prominent individuals for them to take him to a special place where the intellectuals gathered together, the Areopagus in Athens. They received him out of curiosity because of his heritage. You know, he had all the citizenships in his hand. Paul was impressed with the intellectuals, the aristocratic audience, and they listened to his vibrant words. But they could not surrender, says Emmanuel, to the teachings because of their scientific prejudices. My friends, I'm a scientist myself. I've worked 18 years at University of Maryland. I tell you, if you think you're going to spread the teachings of Spiritism through the scientific point of view and people are going to receive it clearly, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think, like Paul, we're going to learn a hard lesson. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. What people need is the Jesus that comes for the sick. Those who have scientific prejudices, they are not ready for the doctor of the souls. Leave them alone. Let's go for those who have crucial doubts, open hearts, those who are suffering. Paul was crushed. It doesn't mean the United States of America is not going to receive the teachings of Spirit, because it already is. We have several American friends who already embrace the teachings of Spiritism. John DeRosa, Peter Hayes, Brian Foster, Heather Fonseca, and many others. Edward Christie. We have our friend in Tampa who does a great job as well, who did works at Kardec Radio, and many others. And if I didn't say your name, forgive me because I'm just cutting it short here. But everyone, we already have Greg Stewart and many others like ourselves. We're naturalized Americans. We're here too. And it's opening. I can tell where we were 10 years ago, where we are now. It's growing. But it's growing from the bottom up, from the hearts of people. It's covering the wounds, healing the wounds. Paul, for a minute, lost sight. He wept copiously. He was heartbroken. In failure, he thought he failed Jesus. What a kind soul. He thought he failed Jesus. It was not only his grief, but he thought he didn't meet Jesus' expectations. For many days, he was crushed in a cloud of worries. And he kept praying, imploring for Jesus' protection. That happens to us. We won't know everything all at once, but then one time, it comes that moment. We're crushed. But in uncertainty and bitterness, remember the law of uncertainty we just discussed and the blessings? He's now in an uncertain terrain. He's puzzled. He has been succeeding all along spreading the news, and now, boom, no success, apparently. What happens next? Jesus sends Timothy to Corinth, and he comes to receive Paul of Tarsus and talks about the successes. Talks about Aquila and Prisca, whom he met. And the brave preacher left Athens disheartened, but he asked himself, and that's another chapter. He had begun to understand the reason why the Master had preferred Galilee with its humble and simple of heart people. He had begun to better grasp the reasons for Christ's plain spoken words about salvation. He says, we're here to work for those who are in need. That's the lesson for tomorrow. Another chapter, the epistles. Paul is learning that the gospel came for those who need it. Those who think they're okay, let's leave them alone and pray for them. Let's not knock on the doors that are not not ready to be opened. Thank you, Tatiana and Fernanda. Thank you, friends, for this message of hope that Jesus brings to us. So let us recap here as we wrap it up. The third lesson of the day. Are we still thinking that the intellect is going to open the doors of the heart? It will, if and only if we're open to the new. The intellect can boost and expedite the moral progress, as in the Spirit's book by Kardec, when we are ready to open the doors, and suffering is a great catalyst. No wonder Jesus said, I have come for the sick, for those who are in need, those who are ill, those who are open. We're open. Thank you, Jesus. And let us share the good news by being firm, serene, and keeping essential needs. Keeping essential needs to endure the storms of life. My dear friends, a big hug of gratitude to all of us, and our gratitude to Paul of Tarsus for his endurance and resilience in spite of it all. A big hug. Thank you, friends. A big hug of gratitude. And until tomorrow, a few more days in this beautiful 20-day journey with Paul and Stephen.